Right before Pitt football opened up its spring camp, I wrote about some storylines that I would monitor over the 5 weeks or so of spring camp. And now we are officially at the point where spring practice is closed and they have one more session, being the Blue Gold spring game, coming up on Saturday. And where do we stand with those storylines? What am I going to watch when it comes to the spring game on Saturday? I have a lot of different areas that I'm going to be focusing on, about 7 right now that I have written down. And I could watch pretty much every single position group and every single storyline, but I have a few picked out that I'm going to talk about today on the newest edition of the Pittsburgh Sports Now Football Pulse. I'm Nathan Brysinger. Be sure to check out all the content throughout spring camp down the south side and from Pitt football's camp over on PittsburghSportsNow.com. Now, let's get into the subject at hand and the multiple subjects that we're going to be focusing on come Saturday. Wrote a lot, again, talked about the storylines coming in, and there was a lot of questions coming into spring camp. Not all of them will be answered. They just won't. That's how it's going to be. You're going to sit through summer and wonder about the receivers or maybe the defensive ends or who's backing up who at certain positions. That's still going to be lingering throughout the summer. Not everything can be handled in spring ball. There's going to be some new guys coming in, some new freshmen that may rise and step in and could play. Maybe they're going to go after some guys in the spring portal. Who knows? There may be a guy that we talk about today that's not on the team in a week. So, a lot still to be told for the upcoming 2025 Pitt season. But heading into the spring game, a couple of areas I'm going to be watching for. Number one of the more talked about areas, of course it warrants it. It comes with the territory of the position. But looking at the quarterbacks, Eli Holstein, quarterback number 1, entering this camp, obviously off to a really good start last year with an undefeated record before he got banged up with some injuries, head injury, and then officially went out and went down with an ankle injury that we basically got confirmed on Thursday from offensive coordinator Katie Bell that Eli Holstein did have off-season surgery. He was one of the 19 or so guys that Narduzzi has talked about that did have surgery, was on the ankle area. Now, he has been talked a lot about. He's still getting back to full health, maybe 100%. He's not there just yet in camp so far. And there's been some ups and downs with him in camp. So I want to watch on Saturday how he is playing, his mobility, and also just his overall decision-making. That's a big thing for all 3 of these quarterbacks that I'm really watching for, along with Julian Duggar and the freshman Mason Heinschel. But the decision-making, and also how Eli Holstein has grown into this offense in year 2. Kate Bell spoke highly on him yesterday on Thursday after the final spring practice, just about how he's really taking another step this year. You know, he's learning more about the offense. He's understanding it more and not, going in there without answers to what he's looking at. He's the one that is able to figure it out on his own, doesn't need Kate Bell's help really much anymore when he's looking at tape. He knows exactly maybe what type of mistakes he's made. So it sounds like Holstein has taken another step. Now let's see how it translates on the field. Of course, he's been going against this defense through the entirety of spring. He's going to, of course, have an advantage, an edge on that. But I want to see his mobility, his footwork, see how he's throwing the ball as well. Now, when it comes to Julian Duggar, he has been talked about ad nauseum throughout this spring camp, maybe more than any other offensive player, other than maybe Ja'Kirian Turner, who we'll get into a second. But Julian Duggar, really want to watch how he runs. How long he sits in the pocket. Is he going to take off quicker than normal, more than Eli Holstein? Or how is his pocket presence? Is he sitting in there and then taking what's coming to him and then taking off when need be? So that will be another thing that I'm really going to keep an eye on. I think Duggar is a very interesting quarterback option for Pitt. He's obviously etched himself as the number 2 option, really showed himself at the bowl game in December, and sounds like he's had a really good couple months since then. Sounds like he's had a really good spring camp, and the coaches have been very happy with where his development is. And how is he going to push Eli Holstein after spring, in this game, after spring, in fall camp? It's a very good problem to have for Pitt, where you have Eli Holstein, who showed a lot of really good flashes over the course of his games in 2024, but so did Julian Duggar in that bowl game. In 1 game sample size, we saw a lot of Julian Duggar, and there's talk that there could be, the specific packages. Maybe Duggar comes in, takes a couple hits off of Eli Holstein. We could see a 1-2 type quarterback situation potentially coming in 2025 in the fall, with Holstein primarily as the number one, but Duggar playing more and more snaps during the season. And then going on to the freshman, Mason Heinschel. He's been another guy that has come in. K Bell is extremely high on him. He's really happy where he is right now for a freshman. Says he's super mature. He makes a lot of good reads. He works in the film room. He's there all the time. So how has he progressed? We saw, I don't know if anybody saw the clip that Pitt put out on Twitter, or not sure if it's on Instagram, but of Kyle Lewis mic'd up. And there was a play where Heinschel, during the Friday night session over at Acrisure Stadium, spun away from an approaching defensive player in the backfield, spun away, and then located a receiver downfield and made a big play. And Lewis was blown away by it. But those are the type of plays it sounds like Heinschel is making that is really starting to make him stand out. And 1, 2, 3 at quarterback position, some really good depth, it sounds like, right now for Pitt. So really want to watch what Heinschel does and Duggar does, maybe more so than Holstein, just because we sort of got that idea of what we saw from Holstein, but where does he stand with his injury? So how do the quarterbacks play, and then how has this offense progressed in year 2 under K Bell? Because there's been obviously talk about them being better with communication, more in rhythm, more, even further along in terms of up-tempo in this offense right now. And the receivers have joined along in that as well. Now, the receivers, obviously, there's 7 or 8 guys we could be watching for. I'm not going to get into that because we'll see them on Saturday. We'll see how they do. But specifically in skill position on offense, I want to watch Ja'Kirian Turner, the freshman running back. He's been talked about a ton in spring camp. And watching him, he looks good. He's a big guy. He's lean. Not big in terms of overall stature, but he's just, his build for his size, standing at, he stands at 5'9", 175 pounds. He might be even more than 175 pounds now. He's just a lean guy. Looks like, he can run some people over even at his stature. But he's got some speed. He's explosive. He's good with his footwork. And it sounds like he's learned the offense very well and is reading the offensive line extremely well as well. So Turner, that was someone that Narduzzi pointed at in his press conference on Thursday. Watch him. He'll be impressive. So keep an eye on Ja'Kirian Turner, number 25 on offense for Pitt football. That leads me into the next one. The offensive line. They're going to be blocking for Turner. They're going to be blocking for Joel Goff if he's healthy and able to go. This offensive line, we talked about it. Pitt invested some resources in them during the offseason, brought in 3 important transfer offensive linemen, Jeff Piercy from Michigan, Keith Govea from Richmond, and Kendall Stanley from Charlotte. And Jeff Piercy, he's huge. He's 7'8". He's going to take over that left tackle position. That's pretty much set in stone, at least at this point in camp. So excited to see what he is able to do, how well he blocks for at least Holstein and Heinschel's blind side in this game. Now, the other 2, Kendall Stanley, Keith Govea, those are going to be the ones that I primarily watch. And for Stanley and Piercy, they're in the ones on the gold team coming up in this spring game. Stanley is right now playing at left guard in this game because of some injuries that have piled up. He's at left guard, and then on the blue team, Keith Govea is with the 2s at center, which Govea is going to be a left guard primarily during the season. Now, there's some thoughts into this of, okay, is this what we're going to see coming up in the season? Is Stanley going to play guard? Well, I'll tell you this. It's a good problem to have that these guys can be versatile now, get it in now that they're switching around positions, because Stanley, the coaching staff views him as a starter. And where does he fit in if Govea is playing left guard? Obviously, Lyndon Cooper's your starting center no matter what. But where does Stanley fit in? So that's a 6th guy that you have. And it's a good thing that they have a 6th guy that they can plug and play wherever. Guys need to take a break off, from playing a ton. Stanley can get in there and take over some snaps and keep, guys fresh. Also important for when it comes to the health point of this offensive line, because we just know that there's going to be some injuries that come up. We've already seen it in spring right now, and that's why Govea is playing center, because Ryan Coretta and Mort Smorancer, the German, who is taking snaps as well, both of them are out and inactive for this spring game. So Govea is going to snap during the spring game. And Narduzzi said he did really well when he got moved in last Friday to take over in that role. He did good. So Govea and then Stanley, those are two guys specifically on the offensive line that I'm curious about. And then the overall depth. I mean, it's real thin. There's only 6 or 7 guys per team in the spring game. So we're not going to, we're going to see pretty much everyone just because of that. But also, how fresh are they going to be within this realm of this spring game? So that's something that I'm keeping an eye on in the game. Now, switching over to the defensive side, one guy in particular I'm very interested in just because he's been another guy, been talk of the camp, Jeremiah Marshallin at linebacker, at the middle linebacker specifically. And Randy Bates, the defensive coordinator, talked to us for the first time on the South Side Thursday. And he said something very intriguing. Narduzzi has pointed out that Marshallins battling there with Braylon Lovelace. Okay, that's been known for a couple weeks now. However, Bates said Marshallin, he could be one of the 3 starters. Now that's news. That's new to us because we knew that he was battling, but it sounds like maybe he even has an edge on Lovelace right now and could be the starting middle linebacker. So gonna see how he plays. We talked about just, he just has the size to him. He's 6'2", 235 pounds. Again, probably even bigger as camp's gone on. The roster that I have in front of me is from the first day of camp. So we're 5 weeks in. They've been in the weight room. They've been putting on muscle. So Marshallin could be even bigger, but he seems like he has a further understanding of this offense. He's only a sophomore. He burned his red shirt last year. He's only a sophomore. He's one of these young guys that could have another breakout season. Sophomore linebackers at Pitt the last 2 years have had some really successful seasons, of course, with Rasheem Biles and Kyle Lewis and Lovelace even being productive. So now it's Marshallins' turn, and I'm excited and very intrigued to see what happens and how he does on Saturday. Now, real quickly in the secondary, I think, I'm very curious about where the backup defensive back options are. At corner, you have Rashawn Murray, who's probable. He's the Cal U, All-American transfer from last year, local kid as well from Pittsburgh. Shadarian Harrison, he's a guy who has some nice length to him. He stands at 6'1", 190 pounds. How does he do in coverage? Curious about those two. And Sean Lee, a freshman, has been talked about quite a bit at that corner position. So those are a couple guys at corner, who will be the main backups behind Rashad Battle and Tamon Lynham. So watching those 3, and then in the safety position, the safety room, primarily I want to look at Kavir Baines-Marquez. He's come in. Bates talked about him that he's made some plays in camp so far. He's a UC Davis transfer. He's a veteran guy coming in last year of eligibility. He's small. He's a smaller guy on that defensive side. He only stands at 5'10", 175 pounds. So what can he do? What type of plays can he make? How physical is he at safety? Because we know Pitt has typically some physical safeties. How is he going to do in this spring game? He's a part of the gold team he's a part of the blue team at free safety, pardon me. So see how he works out. And then Jesse Anderson's another guy. They've talked about him a lot. But where is he in terms of its development? He played a little bit last year. Let's see where he is. Now, the last big defensive spot was going to lead off with this one. Got to fit it in here. Defensive ends. I think this was the biggest question coming into spring camp, at least in my eyes. Where and who will be the top guys at defensive end other than Jimmy Scott? Now, one guy that I heard, and with talking with a Pitt staffer, they're very high on, is Jaden Moore. Says he has a higher ceiling than someone like Sincere Edwards, who was here last year as a freshman, 2 freshmen that was playing and making plays. Now he's off, transferred to UCF, but Jaden Moore, they really like him, and he's a younger guy, redshirt sophomore, still has more development, but he came from Oregon, learning in that system, was in a 3-4 defense. Now he's in a 4-3. He's going to be putting his hand in the dirt, coming off the edge, And sounds like he's had a pretty solid spring, and they're really, really intrigued and said he has a lot of potential in this defense. Stands at 6'4", 245 pounds, whereas Edwards was 6'1", 245 pounds, a smaller guy, smaller wingspan. This Jaden Moore, he has the size, he has the length, along with some of these other guys. Blaine Spires, they brought in. Joey Zielinski, he'll go probably for a couple snaps, but not a lot, just because he has a club on his hand. He hurt his hand during the last couple of weeks of spring camp, but defensive end's huge. Pitt got back on track a little bit more with their production level in terms of sacks, tackles for loss this past season, but defensive end, I think there was still something missing. Jimmy Scott sounds like he's taken another step in his development, and he was already pretty productive last year and really solid for this Pitt team. Where can he go? And then how are these three transfer defensive ends going to fit in on this line, and how big of an impact can they bring? So those are the things that I'm watching for. I think kickers also are another thing. James London, the transfer from Murray State, and Sam Carpenter, the returner who's kicking as well, sounds like he's gotten even better. So that's another one to watch for. But those are the main things that I'm really curious about, really intrigued about on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball coming up for the Pitt Spring game on Saturday at Acrisure Stadium. So be sure to follow along for all of our content. We'll be there covering it all day long over on PittsburghSportsNow.com. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Pittsburgh Sports Now Football Pulse.